Millennials in the property market, one once has got to ask how long it's going to be before the dragon starts devouring the lobster again. But as I say, let's move on to property matters now. And signing up for bonds and making a purchase on a house in the suburbs is no longer necessarily considered an entry into adulthood. There's a new survey out. It shows that many young professionals who migrate to the cities are choosing to live what is termed a simpler life in the form of shared housing. They also prefer travelling rather than owning a home. Let's talk further on this issue. Smee is with us, live in Cape Town, the founder of property investment group Epic South Africa. Grant, good evening to you and welcome. I'm intrigued by this phrase, wanting to live a simpler life. Don't we all want to live a simpler life, not just the millennials?
I think we definitely do want to all live a simpler life, but the millennials are taking the lead on living a simpler life through shared economy, shared living, living for that efficiency right near where they work and where they play.
So what do we then mean by shared accommodation or shared housing? This is beyond student digs, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think it originated with student digs, and I think that's now expanded into young professionals mainly. The big reason being affordability of housing in urban areas. And property being much more expensive than it has been in the past. So shared living would be sharing or making use of bedrooms, sharing bedrooms or sharing rooms within a house, and then having communal spaces, sharing the kitchen and the lounge areas.
So I'm interested to know then how the property market itself is responding to this new trend, given that you have suggested previously it's very much a buyer's market, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's absolutely a buyer's market, but you'll find a lot of developers buying up buildings, particularly in Cape Town. You'll find office blocks being converted into shared accommodation, and then areas like in Cape Town, Woodstock, where they're taking old dilapidated buildings and converting them into micro-living units. So the property market is responding from a density point of view, looking to densify urban areas through new builds.
Having said that, though, banks themselves have also been forced, have they not, to come to the party. In many ways, when it comes to the granting of a bond, I'm assuming they have no choice but to be more accommodating.
Yeah, I think it's more difficult for private investors to get financing on communal spaces, so homes turning into communal properties. But the developers do have a different source of financing provided by the banks, and funds as well are coming to the party.
So broadly, we talk about this being a buyer's market, but I think you've also got to weigh that up against general confidence in the country right now. We've just, for instance, had a new Moody's outlook on South Africa's growth numbers, an absolute disaster. We've had the rand plummeting through the floorboards on that news. Add to that the issue that we've just been talking about, the coronavirus, which is also causing a great deal of uncertainty. How much longer, I wonder, is the property market going to become, as you've termed it in the past, one of the more stable areas of investment in South Africa?
I think the reality is people will always need a space to live in, and I think the factors you've mentioned now are driving this communal living. Communal living gives not only affordability but also flexibility to the people living in those spaces, so they have the flexibility to move in, not take ownership of a property, and then can move almost at the drop of a hat if they do need to. So I think those elements that you've identified are driving this market.
And just a final question then, if I'm looking to dip a toe into that market, if it is a buyer market, I'm also going to assume that this is a time of good rental, and good rental means good profit.
Interestingly, over the last couple of years, escalations in rental have been relatively low. There's a lot of stock coming to market. I think if you're looking for good rentals, you are going to be playing in the communal property market versus the individual buy-to-let market, which has struggled over the last couple of years because of a lot of stock on the market. In Cape Town, short-term properties coming back into the long-term space. So if you are going to look to invest in property currently, I would suggest looking at the communal space for higher returns.
Yeah, and the interesting statistic is the one that we've got on our screen right now. 57% of young people surveyed say they'd rather travel than actually own homes. Interesting insights. Smee, thank you very much indeed, founder of the property investment group Epic South Africa.